This conference will now be recorded.
My water closer to me.
Okay, we're probably a few more people will continue to log in, but it is right after 12 noon, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. I'm Melinda Condon of the PNA Foundation, and I thank you for joining us today for this session, Seeing the Whole Community. This is the fourth in the PNA Foundation Special Diversity Series, Leading Local, the Media's Impact on Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity. Many, many thanks to the Caucus Foundation for providing a grant that made this series possible. Our earlier sessions included Respect at Work, Amplifying Diverse Voices in Your Coverage and Newsroom, and 10 Steps to More Inclusive Reporting. If you missed any of them and are interested in them, please contact us and we are happy to share the recordings. Our next webinar in this series is scheduled for October 8th and will focus on creating Spanish language products. Please be sure to check our website for more information and to register. Today, we're delighted to have Val Hoeppner presenting. Val is a renowned journalist, media instructor, and strategist. She is currently a media consultant as well as the executive director of WMOT 89.5, an NPR radio station in Nashville. Val has an extensive background in diversifying newsrooms, and she'll share more about herself and her diverse background, but you can also visit her website. The link is in the chat box. A few reminders, if you haven't already, please mute your audio. It does cut down on the background noise and make for a better experience for everyone. And please note that today's session will be recorded and we'll share the recording with everyone following the session. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation or any comments you'd like to share with Val, feel free to use the chat room. It's the little thing in the right-hand corner there that looks like a lasso. And again, thank you for joining us. I'll turn it over to Val and wish you all a good session. Thanks.
Well, welcome. It's great to virtually connect with all of you. This is my standard webinar joke for the day. Everybody needs a good laugh and to get started. It has been an interesting year. I've been doing a lot of sessions online, and as Melinda said, she's going to monitor the chat room. So if you have a question, as I get towards the end of each section, I'll kind of pause and ask her if there are any questions. She'll jump in and kind of give me a synopsis, and I'll try to have that. If there's time at the end, I'm willing to hang around a little bit and just chat, answer any questions, or have any kind of discussion you're up for. So with that being said, this is me. If you can't see me on the screen right now, you can look at me here. This is a picture that was taken for an article they did in the East Nashvilleian. That's where I live, is in East Nashville. And I start this conversation about diversity talking about myself and my family because looking at this person, I'm not sure what you see. You know, there might be a few clues. I've got some pretty cool hair. All of those kind of things, but this is the truth. Did you see? You know, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I am an executive of a radio station. I also am the president and CEO of my own company. I'm a soccer fanatic. If anybody wants to know more about the U.S. women's national team, please ask. I am a lesbian. And I'm also a Native American. And you might not know this. I have 4 children. My oldest 2 are Native American. They are Dakota Sioux. And my 2 youngest kids are Puerto Rican. So when I talk about diversity, it's an incredibly personal conversation for me. And I'm okay with having personal conversations with people about diversity and inclusion. It's not often that you know, that my kids see themselves in the media, unless it's for something bad. Usually, you know, my Native American kids often talk about, you know, they see powwows and poverty, and that's how they see Native Americans often represented in the media, and I have seen that as well for years, and I have been a part of some of that coverage, but I've also been always pushing for better coverage in that way. So, you know, this kind of sets it out. I was the director of the Diversity Institute's education arm for the Freedom Forum for a bunch of years. And so I have trained and worked in diversity for years and years and years. And I think the one thing that, you know, I have always come back to is that diversity and inclusion starts with intention. And, you know, you do this intentionally. I have tired of people saying, well, but we want the best picture, or we want the best, you know, this or that in the paper. You know, I run a public radio station that plays American roots music. You know, it could be said that, you know, I want the best music on the radio, not a diverse playlist. And it's frankly a weak argument to me, because you know, your life experience is different from everyone else's life experience. And if we don't expose people to all of the flavors of our communities, you know, that's on us. That they will never have an appreciation. They will never see the community for what it really is. They're just seeing the community through a very tiny prism. So, you know, when I took over WMOT, first of all, I changed it. I changed the format, so that was chaotic. And within the first 6 months, I'm a female, obviously, and my program director is also a female. I hired a lot of females. And, you know, I said, you know, in Nashville, they don't play women on the radio. So we're going to play 50% of our playlist is going to be women. That was my intent. I said it, and that was my determination, and that is what I've done. You know, you are the ones that are going to decide this, right? Inclusion is so intentional. You're going to decide how to, you know, are you just going to include people, LGBTQ plus people in your coverage when it's Pride? Or are you going to add them as small business owners and parents and things like that? I thought it was really incredible that Parenting Magazine just a few months back included Brandi Carlisle and her wife in their coverage. And that was the first time that they had, you know, had a member of the LGBTQ community in their pages as parents. And, you know, yes, there was some backlash to that, but I think it's important first step, because we are parents. You know, being intentional also means that you have to look outside of the normal things that you're doing, the normal outside your personal understanding, outside the schools that you normally cover, the events that you normally cover. You need to look at different artists, different churches, you know, things that are just outside your normal coverage area, what your prism has been. So, you know, this is a great little story.
That was helpful. I would be so
I won't
very
play much
grateful
of it
if administration would consider giving the General Excellence Scholarship to someone who's going to the community college, because I know it is such a great honor, but I also know that I am not the most in need of it.
All right, so this is a great story. It got a lot of national attention, but it did not get, you know, a lot of local attention until it became a national story. This young lady had all the honors and awards, had all kinds of scholarships and things, and decided, you know, that she wanted to donate back her General Excellence Scholarship to someone who was going to go to community college, because her own mother had gone to community college. Great story, great positive light on someone in the community doing good and you know, of a diverse background. You know, I just want to talk for a minute. This, you know, sometimes, you know, the music thing seems to not translate, but in this particular instance, there's a group on Instagram called Book More Women, and they have been tagging festivals and posters for the last several years, and really putting pressure on music festivals to book more women. And what they do is they post the poster with everybody, and then they erase all of the male names, and you can see that very few are, you know, only 22% of the women at the Ride Festival and Telluride are women. But if you look at their stats, you know, it's progressively gotten better. And I use this to talk about what your tangible results can be by, you know, holding yourselves accountable, you know, looking at your coverage and going back over every month and saying, did we represent our community visually this month? What videos did we do? And did we have people of color in it? Did we have, you know, LGBTQ members? Who was in these videos? And you know, did we have people, you know, in their 60s and 70s? It's not even just about color or, you know, sexual orientation. It is also about education levels and age, young and old. I think sometimes we get really comfortable with talking to our peers, and we forget that, you know, 20-year-olds have a lot of opinions. And while they're not always the most informed opinions, they are the next generation coming along behind us. And it's really important to hear what they have to say and represent them visually outside of our sports pages, outside of our education pages. You know, I started my career as a photojournalist, and I worked for more, you know, 20 some years in newspapers, and then I went to work for John Seigenthaler here in Nashville, and doing training for diverse communities and diverse journalists, trying to make sure that more diversity made it into the newsrooms. But, you know, my first love is still photojournalism, and this applies to all visuals. It doesn't just apply to photos. But, you know, it's, you know, those visuals are there to inspire deeper empathy between our audience and what they're experiencing, and, you know, and viewers. It is also something that connects us to one another. And I think when you start to see people of all colors, all races, all creeds in the newspaper, they become our people. You know, one of the things that we all know that brings us all together is sports. And high school sports, you know, is probably the place where you find the most diversity in your, whether it's high school, college, or professional sports, I should say. That's probably where you find the most diversity in your pages. And representing that is important, but it's not the only place it belongs. The more we put people of color and sexual orientation and age in our visuals, the more it makes us a community, the more it connects us to one another and helps us understand one another in a better way. Visual inclusion has to be more than just celebrities and politicians and athletes. You know, seeing the Obamas in the pages of newspapers and on television screens for years and years, it was a step in the right direction, but it hasn't filtered down beyond, you know, that level to all communities just yet. I was telling Melinda yesterday, this is the photograph when I was director of multimedia at the Indianapolis Star that I had the largest fight with our with an editor about. It was super hot, and we were doing a hot weather story, and you all do these hot weather stories. It's hot in Nashville. It's supposed to be 112, supposed to feel like it's 112 today. It is miserable. And so we've all done these stories, and we've all looked for these pictures of somebody out cooling off And so this girl, you know, was repeatedly putting her head in this ice bucket after, you know, being out playing in her neighborhood. And we thought this was, you know, a great photo. We turned it in, and the managing editor was not entertaining this. She thought that this was somehow racist because we weren't showing her face. And this is one of those things where we have these conversations, and it's good to have these kind of conversations, but I think that we have to show people that we are all the same. You know, that if this were a white person sticking their head in the bucket, we would run the picture, would we not? So why wouldn't we run this picture of a Black person sticking their head in the bucket? You know, we have to, you know, kind of stand on principle and say, we all have a shared human experience, and we have to represent that visually for our communities. You know, this is one of those great, just quiet moments that we were able to put in the newspaper. This is a truancy officer in Indianapolis, you know, running down a kid that had been truant from school and having a little chat with him and outside his home. You know, taking pictures of women in jobs and in spaces that they're not normally inhabiting. And, you know, that's happening less and less, but it's not very often that you see a female mechanic, you know, represented in the pages as part of that shared human experience. So, you know, you need to be thinking about those spaces. So how do you get started? You know, you've probably heard this if you've been attending some of these these sessions, you've probably heard this a lot. The most important thing you're going to do to try and diversify your coverage and to talk about diversity and inclusion is to listen. And you know, the first thing I would tell you to do, and I had to do it when I worked in Indianapolis, is go and meet with. I met with the Black community, I met with the Asian community, I met with the Hispanic community there. I met with the LGBTQ community, and I'm going to be honest with you, we did not have a good reputation because of past ownership of the newspaper. Yet 38% of Marion County is African American. So why were we not representing them in the right ways? Why were they only represented in sports and crime? And, you know, I think when you ask people, how do you see yourselves in the paper? Where do you see yourselves in the paper? Or on our web pages or in our social media, which is, you know, just as important as your news pages. And when you ask them what's not being covered, I think you're going to hear, you know, that just our general, you know, our businesses aren't being covered, our restaurants aren't being covered, you know, our general humanity. Sometimes they'll say our social justice issues aren't being covered. And there are trust issues there, and you have to acknowledge them. I had to eat a lot of crow, and I had to really keep showing up in those communities, and I had to send photographers and videographers, you know, to really represent that community in a better way. We did a big documentary on veterans, and you know, it would have been easy to just use all the World War II and Vietnam vets, you know, that we've always used and gone to the American Legion and asked them to help us connect and whatever. But it was really important to me that we go into those communities of color and say, hey, who are your veterans? Who went to Vietnam? You know, and we were able to represent Hispanic folks and Black folks in those spaces. It was really important. And I would say, you know, one of the best things that you can do for yourself is set up a small, it doesn't have to be a big group of people, but small advisory groups. It can even rotate from year to year and give them a digital subscription. It costs you absolutely nothing. If they're not already a subscriber, you know, give them a digital subscription and let them engage you with, you know, we know somebody in our community that does this as well. You ran this story on this, and we know somebody in the Black community that does this. Let them help you find new sources and refresh that, that source list, and refresh the places that you go looking for images each and every day. Doris Trong from the Pointer Institute makes a really good point here. Building trust is an ongoing process that requires active investment from the newsroom. It's an ongoing effort to show that the community, through the news coverage that you're doing, that you recognize that they have rich and full lives. And that's something that, I think social media, if you follow people, if you follow community leaders that are not your typical white, straight, male primarily, but even female folks on Instagram and on Facebook and even on Twitter, the images that I see there of some of those folks show them in a human way. And I think that will help us expand that. But you really do have to, earn their trust, as we all say to our kids all the time. Trust is earned, and it's important for you to recognize that, all these communities, even though they may not economically be as well off as others, have rich and full lives, and that they are part of the community and they need to be represented visually. What's the next step in that? I would say if you have diverse staff members, I would have them get together with you and have conversations about what they see in your news coverage and what they would offer you, as advice or places to start, things that you may be missing. And I know this seems like a ridiculous thing to say, but I can tell you, as the only Native American in most editorial meetings, that I have, having editors that empower you to speak up when you see something that is not right, that you're not representing somebody correctly, or that there are opportunities to represent more groups than just, the white, straight, male group. And I like white, straight men, don't get me wrong. But, that is what we see a lot of. And when I was scrolling through a lot of your pages and your social media, I saw a lot of that. I think, after that, sort of meeting with your staff in small groups and including your visual journalists, whether it's your video team, God bless you if you have an illustrator or a graphics team, including all of those people, because it's not just photos, it's not just videos, it's also the illustrations and graphics that we build that should be representative of our entire community. And meet with them in small groups and have conversations about what they see in your coverage. I would even consider, going back and reviewing 3 months worth of images, front pages, online postings, photo galleries, videos that you've posted, all of those things with your visuals team. And that probably means a good share of your reporting staff, because a lot of you have shed photographers. And the last thing that I would say is listen. You have got to listen to your staff. It always seems like, yeah, but we're really trying to do the right thing. It's just real hard to do the right thing. Or, oh gosh, we missed that one thing. It just becomes kind of a routine. We've gotten ourselves into a rut of who we cover and how we cover it. And it's time to start looking outside and listening to the people that you have around you. So, you're ready to get started, the first thing you're going to do, by the way, I had to throw in a soccer photo because Marta is the GOAT. She plays for Brazil, but she plays for the Orlando Pride in Florida, and one of my favorite soccer players. So had to get that in there. But what does inclusive coverage look like, right? What is it, what is your goal? What is that going to look like in your community? Because a lot of your communities, from what I can see, are, they're primarily Caucasian. But you do have gay people there. I know you have Black people there. I have seen, Hispanic people and Asian people in some of the coverage. So I've seen it here and there in posts. I've been watching a lot of your publications for the last week. And so I know those people are there, but what is that going to look like for you? What does it mean to you? And you need to set sort of a mission statement for, inclusive coverage. I think it's really important to put it down into words so that everyone is on the same page. And then what does success look like? Does success look like, 2 days out of the week we have a front page that has a woman or a minority person, a diverse person on the front page represented? Maybe. I'm not a big one on quotas. I lived through the quota era of News 2000 in the Gannett years. And that, it's funny, at the time I was so annoyed by that mainstreaming. I don't know if any of you, I know the York paper is on here, and they're part of Gannett now, and but the Gannett company, wanted every article to be mainstreamed, and to, they set these kind of rigid goals and things. And I'm not a big person on rigid goals, but I do think quotas can be goals. You can say it in a way that it, we're going to dedicate X number of man hours. We are going to dedicate X number of photo gallery space, video space, whatever that space is, to covering, the diverse and inclusive community. And you really do have to make the mission clear to both the staff members who are going out into the community and the editors, because my staff in Indianapolis, just because you have a diverse staff, and I will tell you, I am proud that I hired a lot of diversity into that newsroom, but just because you have a diverse staff doesn't always mean you're going to get a diverse picture or video back, and get it into your news pages. And that's because sometimes there are editors that get in the way of that, and they say, yeah, I don't like that picture, or I don't relate to that picture, or that picture doesn't represent the person that's in the lead of the story. I've heard that more times than I can stand. We don't mirror the story, we enhance the story. That is how I've always approached photojournalism and visual journalism. The photograph, the video is there to enhance all of that, and to let people see a broader piece of the story. It doesn't have to mirror it. And so sometimes it's your editors that are the roadblocks to diverse and inclusive visual coverage. This is my one moment where I'm going to chastise, newspapers in general. And I won't just pick on you, but I see this a lot in your coverage. So I know that a lot of newsrooms have shed journalists. They have laid people off, and our newsrooms are smaller. And a lot of those newsrooms have reduced, the photo staff or eliminated them. But I will tell you, in looking through a lot of this coverage, I saw a lot of, crime stuff with tape and stock photos and things like that. And I will give you a little bit of credit because it is a pandemic, but there are plenty of people out and about and plenty of opportunities to take pictures of people in your community. I saw lots of pictures of buildings, of police cars, of things and a lot of stuff that was stock. And if you want to represent people and you want to include the whole community, then you need to take pictures of people in your community. It's the only way to expand both your visual coverage and your audience in general, you know, for your products. So that's my soapbox moment. I'll get off that for a second. One of the things, you know, talking about, you know, beginning, one of the things that I do at WMOT is this thing, we call it office hours. And, you know, that's an interesting group. It's not the whole picture, obviously, but we go to places and do, you know, showcases and things like that every week, and invite the community to come and talk to us. And at any given time, there's at least 3 of us in the room that people can come up and, you know, we get the Nashville handshake. If you guys don't know what that is, the Nashville handshake is, hi, I'm so-and-so, here's my, would you like a copy of my CD? And they just put it in your hand. That's the Nashville handshake. But, you know, but we also get to have really good conversations about, you know, musicians that we don't know about, that we could include, just, you know, the news. We do have a news team, and people will come and approach us about that. Sometimes it's not, you know, we're an NPR station and we take top of the hour news, and sometimes people like it and some people don't. But we're there and we're available to the community. And you can do the same kind of thing by posting up a reporter, an editor, a photographer at a coffee shop, at a library, at, you know, whatever public space, and kind of promoting that on socials and things. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, that's a little dicey these days, especially in Pennsylvania. And that may be true, that it's dicey, you know, but being available to the public and letting people know that, hey, I work for the York Daily Times, you know, I'm here, I work for WHYY, I work for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and, you know, I'm interested in what you have to say. Being available in that way is really important. And we also do some targeted, and this picture is with Grace Potter and her husband, Eric Valentine, if you know who Grace Potter and the Nocturnals are, you know, and we have, like, we get together about 20 people and we just have conversations with them about why they're listening, what they're listening to, what, you know, they wish we would play. And I think, you know, going into some of these diverse communities and having those same conversations with people would be beneficial. So if you're afraid, literally, and I understand that, you know, to kind of create an open office hours, but if you can create, you know, small groups where you can take them to the coffee shop, or you can meet at a community center, you know, and just have, even if it's 5 to 10 people, just having those conversations is really important. Something that we are trying, and it, for us, again, it's a little bit different, but we're also trying it. You might know that I work with a lot of student journalists and college journalists, and there's a thing called the Listening Post Collective, and it's listeningpostcollective.org. Maybe Melinda can put that in the chat so you have that link. They have this great idea where they actually post pieces of paper, you know, on telephone posts and coffee shop walls and wherever, with a numbers of text, and they ask these kind of questions. What's changed in your neighborhood? Or what new businesses are in your neighborhood? What's on your mind? You know, you can go look at all the things that they've done. And, you know, because I know newsrooms are challenged, there's all kinds of texting programs out there. You do have to have a cellular plan for those, but you can use Google Voice because it does have a texting feature to it. And, you know, just posting these around in some of these diverse communities. What would you like to see in the newspaper? You might get some lewd things. we all know that. We get them in our comments section, we get them in our social media section already. But you also might start some real interesting conversations in places with people who you didn't even know about. And that way you've got their, excuse me, their number, and you can call them. You can text them back and say, hey, we're working on a story about this. Could I call you? I'd love to make a picture, or I'd love to include you in this video. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I've been watching this project go on, and we are actually, kind of looking at Latin roots now. We've really got a diverse playlist, probably the most diverse playlist in NPR radio stations right now. But we have a growing Hispanic community here, and so we're kind of trying to use these kind of signs in that space and texting to get some conversations going. And I said don't forget social media. I grabbed a few things. WHYY. You can learn a lot about an organization and their priorities by looking at their Instagram grid. And WHYY, you get a pretty good grade. You guys are doing a good job of having a lot of different visuals and a lot of different people in your visuals. It looks to me like you are doing a good job of representing lots of different pockets in your community, and that's great. Go Erie, I thought this was cool. That you had some events and chose to highlight one that showed a Black artist. Philadelphia Inquirer. I'll talk about that here in a minute, but a vaccine parade, and this is a very diverse story and photographs, and that's pretty cool. And gosh, who doesn't like soft serve ice cream? So I would get vaccinated for soft serve ice cream. So I asked a couple of my really close friends who are Black to help me with this session. Just give me a couple of points. And the first person that I asked, her name is Denise Keenan, and she is the managing editor of visuals at the Philadelphia Inquirer now. But what you don't know about her is that I hired her first as an intern, and then before she left her internship, I actually got her to sign a contract saying that when she graduated that December, that she would come back and work at the Indianapolis Star. And I have nurtured her, and I have been a champion for her. She has been a champion for me, and it's great to see her succeed. So I asked her, how do you make sure your publication has photos and videos that are representative of the entire community? And I'll read to you. The answer is simple. I have a diverse staff and monitoring story pitches. I was very fortunate to have inherited a pretty diverse staff, and the hires I have made have been in line with that as well. Diversity in ethnicity, but in age and gender as well. Having a diverse staff does not guarantee diversity, however. You need to also vet the story pitches you receive and push for stories outside your own understanding. Lastly, change will not happen right away. It is a long process that is worth the struggle. And, I agree with her 100% about vetting the story pitches, and we'll talk about that. Hiring in diversity, and I think some of you may have been viewers of a panel that Hollis Townsend was on from the Gannett Company, and he was talking about how it's hard to hire diverse people. And I am proud to say when I worked at the Gannett Company and even beyond, I made all the diverse hires from the moment that I became a manager, a hiring manager. I have hired women. I have hired Hispanic folks. I've hired Black. I've hired Asian folks. I've really tried to make each newsroom and organization that I work in look like the community, the entire community. Doesn't mean I don't hire white people. It does mean that I am keenly aware that that needs that there's a need for that. And one of the things Melinda and I were talking about yesterday that I get on my soapbox, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second again, but my first point here: use job fairs and mentoring programs, conferences to connect with young talent. We've done a terrible job in this industry of cutting out our internship programs or reducing them significantly, reducing the ability to go to conferences, and really, mentoring programs as a whole. We are not training the next generation of journalists. We are not bringing them up like we were brought up, given the opportunities that we have been given. And I think it's the biggest problem we have in hiring, making diverse hires, but making hires that want to stay in the industry right now. You have to nurture young journalists. You have to identify young talent, and you have to, give them feedback and nurture them, bring them along. I used to have, Hollis could tell you, I always joked that I had a list, and it was a real physical list. I had a list in my desk drawer of potential hires, and I would meet these people at NABJ and NAHJ and AAJA and the Unity Conference and the NAJA Conference, and at Women in Photojournalism, and at MPPA and APME, and all these different places that were available to me. I would meet them, and I would connect with them, and I would exchange business cards or exchange contact information with them. And I would send them an email, and I would just say, hey, I really enjoyed our conversation. I'd like to keep in touch. From time to time we have openings, and if there's one that might work for you, let's stay in touch. I'd love to give you some feedback on your work and help you get where you want to go. And I was able to do that. And I know times have changed, but that's that really putting yourself out there and spending time and building a diverse workforce is really important. It's hard work. It's work. It's not something that you're going to do 8 to 5. But I got lots of people sending me videos saying, hey, can you look at my video that I shot and give me some feedback? Yes. And then when it came time, when I had a job opening, I could look down my list and go, well, here are the top 3 candidates. I'm going to talk to all 3 of them about this job opening. And, because Gannett was very focused on diverse hiring, I was always able to make my hire and make it fast. I could get somebody on board within a month most of the time back then. And, I know times have changed, but the effort that we put into educating, training, nurturing, and recruiting diverse talent is incredibly important. And then the last thing I have to say is, a lot of those people. So I worked at the Freedom Forum, and I ran the Diversity Institute's education programs, and I trained every year. I probably trained at least 60, if not 75 diverse journalists that went out into newsrooms, and a lot of those were into paid and subsidized paid internships. And not all of the newsrooms that I sent them into were welcoming. I had one young Native American reporter who, tremendous talent, excellent person, really funny, really good writer. And the newsroom that she went into decided to put her in what I like to call the old man pod. So they put her desk in with 4 men who were 55 and up, and they were all white guys. And I could see the conversation happening. Well, let's put them with some of the real veterans. But that actually ran her out of that newsroom because she didn't feel like she was part of the newsroom. She didn't feel like she was part of any movement there. And if you know anything about these young journalists, they need to feel like they're part of something. They need to feel like they're part of something bigger. And so things like that, making sure that, you know, that you're thinking about who are they going to sit with? Who's going to be their mentor? Is it some, you know, are there other young people that they can be around? And you know, can you know, arrange luncheons to make sure that those people meet? It's not just hiring them. It's not just getting them in the door. It's making them feel welcome and empowering them, you know, to be part of the team. You know, every so often I just have to throw a couple of pictures in here, you know, living a full and rich life. I'm going to talk just briefly about, you know, vetting story pitches. I always asked my team, you know, is this something we've done before? And if so, you know, how do we expand the viewership for it? How do we make this more inclusive? How do we, you know, show the whole community? Just because we've done something before doesn't mean we have to do it every year. Maybe there are new things we should be looking at. I know that we all have very limited visual resources, so I would encourage you that to think about this and say, you know, that may be our top story of the day, but it's not a super visual story. So maybe as opposed to sending our photographer or videographer to this non-visual story, we're going to let that be the strip, you know, the top strip, or, you know, whatever, however you lay that out. And we're going to focus our visual energy on this other story that has potential to, you know, have better visuals, first of all, and secondly, to allow us to photograph or you know, video people of color. Ask questions before you assign a photo or video. You know, reporters out there, you know, you need to, photo assignments were one of my big issues with reporters when I was the multimedia director, and, you know, really asking questions, who's going to be there? What, you know, what does this crowd look like? What kind of opportunities are there? Who can we connect with on site? You know, what is going on? You know, instead of like showing up to somebody's house and having them all sitting in their best clothes on the couch, ready to have their picture taken, you know, that's never like representative of showing somebody's, you know, full and rich life. So ask those questions before you make that assignment. Just a couple of kudos here. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, you know, did a nice job. They had some good diverse faces in their coverage. Philadelphia Inquirer. I thought the York Daily Record did a really neat thing here. And you know, esports are not everybody's cup of tea, and not everybody believes that that's a true sport. It's an ongoing conversation here with my teenage boys. But I just thought this was a great visual representation. And then they took it a step further and they did this great video. And they could have talked to, you know, a lot of different people, but they chose this guy, Alex, and E-Special, X-Special, I guess. And I thought he was great. And they just did a really nice job of showing that this isn't just a bunch of white kids drinking Mountain Dew and playing sports, but this is this, you know, really diverse, cool space that people are sharing. So kudos to you for that. I asked another friend of mine, he's actually a business partner of mine in an app company. His name is Lawrence Jenkins. He was part of a Pulitzer Prize winning team in the Dallas Morning News in the past, and he's a freelance photographer now. I asked him the same question that I asked Denise, but as the photographer. And he said, you know, that it's hard, right? It's hard to represent, but instead of approaching my pictures from a literal or direct perspective, I try to think about who's being affected, on what level they are being affected, why they're being affected, and what are the ripple effects, or who else might be affected as a result By thinking this way, I tend to approach pictures with a broader perspective and not a singular focus. And I think that's really smart. And, you know, Lawrence was part of the Dallas Morning News team that covered social justice protests last summer. And, you know, he did a good job of sort of, you know, looking for the ripple effects. Who's out there? Who, you know, instead of focusing just on the speaker here, he's looking at, you know, what does this crowd look like? And it's a little bit of everybody. Like it is the community that he's trying to show here, because we're all stakeholders in this story, not just the Black community, not just the Asian community, not just the Hispanic community. You know, we're all affected. And I just thought this was a cool photo of his. So, you know, he's a cool guy and he's a great photographer. So a couple of takeaways, and I'm not sure where I am for time. I'm right on time. That's good. You know, diverse visual coverage, you know, it starts with intention, right? We've talked about that. You've got to build trust in that community because they're not going to invite you into your home. I will tell you a story. I worked in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and we were a statewide newspaper at the Argus Leader, and we covered the reservations quite a bit. And Pine Ridge was one of those places that we covered. And Bill Clinton in 1999, I got to cover him going there for this empowerment zone thing. And we went back a year later to see what had changed. And we kind of did that on a yearly basis. And there was a family that I wanted to photograph, and a Native American family there. And, you know, we connected, we met at a community center, and I went back. They invited me to their house for Indian tacos. And if you've ever had Indian tacos, you just go when somebody says they're having Indian tacos. It's amazing. But I went there for Indian tacos, and I knew that they were distrustful of the media. And so I left my cameras in the car that night. And, you know, we had a great night, and I excused myself, went back to the hotel. You know, and they said, well, hey, why don't you come? Gabe has a basketball game. And so I went to the basketball game, and I didn't take my cameras. I just sat with them. And I did that for a few nights. And, you know, it took 3 nights of me just being with them to get them to trust me enough to take pictures of their family, to let me. They said, why don't you go get your cameras? You know, you should show people that we're just like everybody else, that, you know, we're trying to do this, that, and the other thing, just like everybody else. And so go get your cameras. And that was my in. But there are those times where you're going to have to build that kind of trust in the community. Even though I'm a Native American, I was working for a mainstream newspaper. And so I wasn't just granted a free pass. You know, again, hiring the diverse staff and empowering them, vetting those story pitches, and identifying stakeholders, and not just the stakeholders, but the, you know, the ripples. Who else does this affect, and how does it affect them, and chase those. And at this point, if there's something that, you know, if you have questions, if you want to have a conversation, I am so open to doing that. But if you don't want to talk, we don't have to. Melinda, is there anybody in the chat that's saying anything?
There was just a comment earlier when you were talking about the office, open office, office hours thing. In Erie, they're actually considering posting reporters, photographers at 3 local community centers, which mostly service the minority community. They work remotely all the time anyway, so why not? So that was going along with, you know, being in your community and reaching out like you had mentioned.
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. I love that. And, you know, I also think, you know, it's not just about the diversity and things like that. It's also about media literacy, like showing people how we do our jobs, right? Because, you know, I am so over we all are over the fake news and all that stuff. I ban that phrase in my house, and if my teenagers say that, even jokingly, their phones shut off. It's amazing how that happens. But I think just being in the community and being visible and being transparent about how we do business. I think one of the things that a lot of newspapers tried in the very beginning was putting when video became a thing and live streaming video became a thing. They started live streaming their after their story budget meetings and stuff. And I do think that there's something to that, letting people see how we make decisions. And I think the video part of it was a total bust. But I think that if you invite community members into those occasionally, and when I was back in the day when I was applying for a job at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, I went into their news meeting and it was packed, and I had to like go sit in a corner, and here I'm like the job interviewee. You would think I would get a nice chair at the table. No, there were all these people in the room, and I asked the managing editor, I said, who are all these folks? And they said, a couple times a week we invite community members in to watch our meeting, and then we kind of hang around after and have a little lunch with them and talk about just the newspaper and things we're doing and things that are going on in the community. And I think we all of this hostility towards the media has made us kind of close ourselves off a little bit from the community. But I think that as local news folks, the more transparent we can be and the more inviting and welcoming we can be, I think the better we represent ourselves and the more less misunderstandings we have. So, anybody else?
That kind of goes along with that. There was a question. Do you find you get a good balance of feedback when you hold public one-on-ones, not just negative? And if you do get negative, how do you respond to the negative feedback?
That's a great question. We tend to get a lot of positive feedback, but I will tell you, especially during 2020, we got a lot of negative feedback about NPR coverage, and I listen, because I always want to, be as transparent as I can be with our community. I listen, and they were all like, I'm not going to become a member of your station until you take NPR off because it's the most biased news. And I try to address with them in an easy way. Tell me what you found disturbing. Like, can you give me an example of a story that you felt was unfair? Because if I'm dealing in generalities, I don't know how to have an impact for you. And that usually kind of sets them, kind of rocks their world, because they don't really know what to do when you give them an open forum to tell you that. And I think that I would advise anybody to kind of say, be specific. Can you tell me specifically what about this story, or give me a specific about something a story we've done that, that we did the wrong thing or represented people in the wrong way. Because I think most of the time, if you're willing to listen to them and engage them a little bit and help them understand, a lot of times I'll say, well, we run NPR News because we're licensed to a university like a lot of public radio stations, and in fact, we're part of the School of Journalism. The dean of the School of Journalism is my boss, and so we feel like it's important to have news and have a space where we can have interns that contribute to our news report. And that's, they don't ever think about that. They just think it's like this liberal cabal making these decisions. But yeah, I would engage them a little bit. If they turn nasty, I would get away from them. This, but I don't allow myself to be a punching bag for people. I have one guy who, we had a really amazing Black artist on the stage, and he ran him down to me, and I just said, well, I mean, maybe he's not your cup of tea, and you made a choice to be here today, and I appreciate you being a supporter of this station. We're not going to hit all of your face every day, and I just left it at that and walked away. I wasn't going to let him beat me up. So, anybody else?
There was a comment going back to the photo of the woman with her head in the cold water barrel.
Yep.
Did you get any public feedback after you published it? The comment from Jessica is, I didn't think about it being racist at all. It just looked like an amazing photo that showed how hot it was. But when you say the editor's reasons for not wanting it to run the photo, I could see some people might think that. So did you get any negative feedback about that, or?
Zero. I actually won that battle. It went in the paper, and no, we didn't. Nobody commented on it, and that's great. Like, I guess, I think that was at a time too where we were really still struggling with communicating and collaborating with the Black community in Indianapolis. But it was important to me to just show a normal, everyday, average picture of a Black person cooling off just like a white person or a Hispanic person would. So yeah, great question. Anybody else? Well, I as you might have noticed, I'm really passionate about talking about diversity and inclusion, especially considering my family. I always tell people, that we want to see ourselves in coverage. We want to be covered just like the rest of the community, and it's it's a huge part of what I've done in my career is training and helping the next generation along. So if the one favor you can do for me is pay it forward. Somebody helped you get, where you want to be, and, find someone to mentor and help them get into this business, especially people of color, LGBTQ people who, may not be the obvious choice. They may not be your number one pick, but they're in your top 3. Pick them and mentor them and help them along, because it will pay dividends for the rest of your career.
It's great. Thank you, Val. The comments coming in now were, this was an awesome session. Thank you, and very educational, and great ideas that they can actually do. So great feedback from a great session. So thank you so much, Val.
All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you.
And so we'll share your slides and the recording with everyone then, either later today or tomorrow. And thank you again, Val. So great to work with you again, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to bring you back to Pennsylvania someday and see you in person.
That's right. I'm way funnier in person.
Yeah. Someone else said this was also very valuable, helping them to think differently about their coverage and the community. So wonderful. That's what we wanted to achieve with this series. So we hope people will continue to participate in this series as we go on too.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
You bet.
Everyone take care.
Bye, Val.
Hey, who is that? Oh, bye.